In 2023, China became the world's largest automobile exporter, overtaking Japan for the first time in history. And the engine behind that seismic shift was not gasoline. It was electricity. Chinese electric vehicle brands went from being a global punchline to a genuine threat to every legacy automaker on the planet in less than a decade. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover exactly how that happened. We will trace the full journey from government subsidies and cheap batteries to world-class design and global expansion. We will look at the brands leading the charge, the strategies that are working, and the one factor that legacy automakers consistently underestimated, and that underestimation may cost them everything. Stay with us, because the story is far more complex and fascinating than the headlines suggest. To understand where Chinese EVs are today, you need to understand where China's auto industry started. For most of the 20th century, China had no meaningful domestic car industry. Foreign automakers entered the Chinese market through joint ventures, partnerships with local companies that allowed brands like Volkswagen and General Motors to sell cars to Chinese consumers while transferring technology and expertise to local partners. China was a market, not a manufacturer. That was the plan. Except China had a different plan entirely. By the early 2000s, the Chinese government had identified electric vehicles as a strategic opportunity. Rather than trying to compete with established combustion engine technology, where German, Japanese, and American companies had decades of refinement and institutional knowledge, China decided to leapfrog the entire combustion era. The bet was enormous. The payoff has been staggering. Between 2009 and 2022, the Chinese government poured over 200 billion yuan into EV subsidies, infrastructure development, and research programs. It mandated EV quotas for automakers selling in China. It built charging networks at a pace that no other country came close to matching. By 2023, China had more than 8 million public charging points, roughly 10 times the number in the United States. The infrastructure created the demand, and the demand created the industry. The early years were not glamorous. Chinese EVs in the 2010s were largely low-range, low-quality vehicles designed for urban commuters. Western automotive journalists dismissed them as toys. The range was poor, the build quality was inconsistent, and the brand recognition outside China was essentially zero. But something important was happening underneath the surface. Chinese manufacturers were learning, iterating, and scaling at a speed that the traditional automotive world simply was not built to match. BYD is the company that most people now associate with China's EV revolution, and for good reason. Founded in 1995 as a battery manufacturer, BYD had an advantage that no other automaker in the world possessed: it made its own batteries from the very beginning. When the rest of the industry was scrambling for battery supply and paying premium prices to sell manufacturers, BYD controlled its entire supply chain. Warren Buffett recognized this early, investing in BYD back in 2008. By 2023, BYD surpassed Tesla as the world's largest EV seller by volume, moving over 1.5 million fully electric vehicles in that year alone, with another 1.4 million plug-in hybrids on top of that. Those are not projections. Those are delivered units. But BYD is only one piece of the story, and focusing only on BYD misses what makes China's EV rise so remarkable. This is not one company succeeding. This is an entire ecosystem evolving in parallel. NIO positioned itself as the Chinese Tesla, targeting premium buyers with a distinctive approach to the battery problem. Instead of waiting 40 minutes to charge, NIO customers can swap a depleted battery for a fully charged one in under 5 minutes at automated battery swap stations. The company has built thousands of these stations across China. It is a fundamentally different solution to range anxiety, and it has earned NIO a fiercely loyal customer base willing to pay prices comparable to BMW and Mercedes. XPeng, known internationally as XPeng, took the technology-first route, building advanced driver assistance systems and prioritizing software capability. Li Auto focused on extended-range electric vehicles, essentially hybrids with large batteries, targeting families with its spacious, premium SUVs. Each of these companies raised billions in capital, listed on major stock exchanges, and built manufacturing facilities that would impress any automotive engineer in the world. Then there is the supply chain story, which is where the real competitive moat lies. China controls approximately 80% of the world's lithium-ion battery processing capacity. It mines significant percentages of the key minerals involved. CATL, the Chinese battery giant that supplies not just Chinese automakers but also Tesla, BMW, Volkswagen, and Stellantis, is the largest battery manufacturer on Earth by a significant margin. When Western automakers talk about building competitive EVs, they are in many cases still dependent on Chinese suppliers somewhere in their supply chain. That dependency is not accidental, and it did not happen overnight. Here is what nobody talks about enough. The speed advantage Chinese EV makers have is not just about cost. It is about development cycles. A traditional Western automaker takes roughly 5 to 7 years to develop a new vehicle from concept to production. Chinese EV companies are doing it in 2 to 3 years. XPeng redesigned a major platform in 18 months. BYD releases updated versions of its vehicles annually. This iterative approach, borrowed directly from the consumer electronics industry rather than traditional automotive culture, means Chinese EVs are improving faster than legacy competitors can respond. The design quality has also made a dramatic leap that many Western consumers are only now beginning to notice. Early Chinese EVs looked derivative and uninspired. Today, the interior of a Neo ET7, the styling of a BYD Han, or the spaciousness of a Li Auto L9 genuinely compete with anything Europe or America is producing. Chinese companies have hired top design talent from around the world, including former designers from Audi, BMW, and Pininfarina. The stereotype of cheap imitation is no longer accurate, and holding on to that perception is a mistake. What does this mean for the global automotive market? The implications are enormous and they are already playing out. In Europe, Chinese EV imports grew by over 400% between 2021 and 2023. In Southeast Asia, Chinese brands now dominate EV sales. In Australia, BYD became the best-selling EV brand. The European Union, alarmed by the competitive threat, launched an anti-subsidy investigation into Chinese EVs in 2023 and ultimately imposed additional tariffs of up to 45% on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The United States went further, raising tariffs on Chinese EVs to 100% in 2024. These are defensive moves, and defensive moves tend to confirm that the threat is real. The tariff question raises a deeper issue that the industry is grappling with right now. Chinese EV companies are actively responding to trade barriers by building factories outside of China. BYD has plants under construction or already operating in Hungary, Brazil, Thailand, and Mexico. If the vehicles are manufactured locally, the tariffs become irrelevant. This is the same playbook that Japanese automakers used in the 1980s when they faced similar protectionist pressure in the United States, and it worked then. For legacy automakers, the situation demands honest self-assessment. Volkswagen, once the dominant force in China's car market, saw its market share fall sharply as local brands took over. Ford and General Motors are facing similar pressure. These companies are not standing still, they are investing heavily in electrification. But catching up to competitors who have been doing this exclusively for years, while simultaneously managing the decline of combustion engine profitability, is genuinely difficult. Some will manage the transition successfully. Others may not. The rise of Chinese electric vehicle brands is ultimately the story of what happens when a nation makes a strategic decision, backs it with capital and policy, and executes over a long enough time frame. It is a story about batteries and supply chains, but it is also about design philosophy, development speed, and the willingness to challenge assumptions that the established industry treated as permanent. The companies that built their reputations over a century of combustion engineering are now being forced to compete on entirely new terms. And the brands writing those new terms are Chinese. The global EV race is not over. It is barely into the middle chapters. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to AutoVision Daily for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.